Last month at EVO Japan 2026 in Tokyo, officials from Guinness World Records walked onto the stage and handed Capcom a certificate. Official world record. Most participants in a single fighting game tournament in history. 7,168 players in a Street Fighter 6 bracket. Just at that one event. For context, every other game at that same tournament combined had around 3,000 players. Street Fighter 6 alone had more than double all of them put together. And this wasn't a one-off moment. Street Fighter 6 just crossed 7 million copies sold. It did that in 36 months. Street Fighter V, which launched in 2016, took 7 full years to reach that same number. Street Fighter 6 did it in 3. So, what happened? What did Capcom do differently? And why is Street Fighter 6 not just a good fighting game, but actively pulling people into the genre who had never touched one before? That's what we're getting into today, and the story behind it is way more interesting than you might think. To understand why Street Fighter 6 matters so much, you need to sit with how bad things got after Street Fighter V launched in February 2016. That game launched without an arcade mode in 2016, a Street Fighter game. No arcade mode, no proper versus CPU. The story mode that did ship at launch was about an hour long, and then a more substantial one came months later as a free update, which confirmed what everyone already suspected. The game was shipped early and incomplete. The servers were broken on launch day, players couldn't connect, matchmaking was broken. Forum threads on Steam were full of people who couldn't even get the game to start. The PC version had no native direct input support, meaning a ton of fight sticks didn't work out of the box. Director Nakayama has been candid about how difficult those years were. He directed Street Fighter V too, and he felt the weight of that reputation. The game eventually recovered. They added arcade mode, improved the netcode, built out the character roster. By the time Champion Edition dropped in 2020, it was genuinely good. But the community never fully forgot how it launched. The trust was damaged. So, when Street Fighter 6 was announced, the pressure was enormous. Not can we make a good fighting game pressure. Capcom knew how to do that. The pressure was, can we make people believe in this franchise again? Here's the detail about Street Fighter 6 that I don't think gets talked about enough. The game's entire visual and cultural identity came from Nakayama and producer Shuhei Matsumoto being genuine hip-hop heads since childhood. This is not marketing speak. These guys did real interviews about it. Nakayama grew up listening to Public Enemy. He eventually went deep into international hip-hop, German hip-hop, Italian hip-hop. Matsumoto's era is mid-90s to early 2000s. Dr. Dre at the top of his list. And they both agreed on something. The street in Street Fighter had never really been taken seriously. The series has always had hip-hop and street culture baked into its DNA. Nakayama pointed to Street Fighter 1 and Street Fighter 3 Third Strike as early examples. But no game had actually leaned into all 4 elements of hip-hop culture the way they wanted to. They weren't just talking about the music, they were talking about graffiti, breakdancing, the visual language of the streets. Matsumoto put it directly in an interview. Whether it's the intro of Street Fighter, the characters quoted by famous rappers, or the art you see on the streets, we're aware that Street Fighter is a perfect match for street and hip-hop culture. So they made it the whole game. The graffiti aesthetic isn't decoration. A drive impact explodes with spray can streaks. A drive rush bathes the screen in luminescent color. Every character has a personalized tag that matches their personality. Kimberly is a Bushin ninja who also tags walls and fights with spray cans. The research literally took the developers to actual streets, not a focus group, actual streets, watching people move, watching how breakdancing works, building that motion and philosophy into individual characters from the ground up. The result is a game that has an identity, not a mood board, a real identity. And after Street Fighter V's visual blandness, that landed like a gut punch in the best way. Okay, let's get into the actual fighting for a second, because the drive system is legitimately one of the best mechanical ideas the genre has seen in years. Every character has a drive gauge, 6 bars, and from that one resource, you can do 5 completely different things. Drive Impact is a powerful armored attack. Drive Parry lets you parry almost anything. Drive Rush lets you cancel into aggressive pressure. Overdrive powers up your special moves. And Burnout, if you empty your gauge completely, puts you in a vulnerable state where you take chip damage and lose the parry options. What makes it brilliant is the risk-reward loop. Drive Impact is scary because it punches through most attacks, but it's also incredibly punishable if blocked near a corner. You get a full combo for free. So both players are always thinking about the drive gauge, not just their own, their opponents'. You're reading 2 resource bars at once and making decisions around both. Nakayama wanted a system that was layered enough for veterans to master, but visible enough for new players to immediately understand. The gauge is right there on screen. Anyone can look at it and know what's happening. The depth comes from the interactions, and those interactions are deep enough that 3 years in, people are still discovering new applications. That's the benchmark for a great fighting game system. Easy to see, endlessly deep.
This is where it gets spicy. When Street Fighter 6 announced Modern Controls, a simplified input system that lets you do special moves with a single button press instead of quarter circle or zigzag motions, the hardcore community lost it. Dumbing it down, catering to casuals, this will ruin competitive integrity. That was the energy. Here's what Nakayama actually said about it. He told Inside Games that he and his team could have gone even further. They could have cut classic controls entirely and just shipped modern. He didn't because he respected the heritage. But here's the real line. The starting point for developing modern controls was to make it so that everyone will be able to use special moves. That's it. That's the whole argument. You're never gonna love fighting games if you pick one up, mash buttons, and nothing cool happens. Modern controls means a new player can execute a Hadouken on their first try. That feeling, I did the thing, is the hook. And once you're hooked, the rest comes naturally. The proof is in the numbers Nakayama shared after launch. The core Street Fighter player base had previously been men in their 30s. After Street Fighter 6, the average age dropped to people in their 20s. And for the first time in the franchise's history, there was a meaningful rise in female players. Nakayama said plainly, "Of course, this is the kind of rejuvenation we are aiming for, although it was not an easy task to achieve." And then, EVO 2023 happened. A blind player, using the game's audio accessibility features, which give distinct sounds for distance from opponent and different attack types, won an official EVO match. Nakayama was in the room. He said he was proud. That moment wasn't just heartwarming. It was proof that every accessibility decision they made was the right call.
2 more things that Street Fighter V didn't have that Street Fighter 6 nailed: a proper single-player mode and a community space that actually works. World Tour is Street Fighter 6's RPG-light story mode. You create your own character, travel the world, meet the cast, learn their fighting styles, and play through a narrative campaign. It's not the deepest RPG ever made, but it does something really smart. It teaches you how to play fighting games without making you feel like you're in training mode. You're exploring, you're leveling up, you're trying moves naturally because they fit the story context. New players finish World Tour having absorbed fundamentals without realizing they were being tutored. That is genuinely clever design. Battle Hub is the online lobby, a massive virtual arcade where your avatar walks around, sits down at arcade cabinets, and challenges other players. There are classic Capcom arcade games in there to play between matches. People hang out, communities form. Nakayama's whole goal was to build a game where fun happened beyond just the core combat, and Battle Hub is where that vision is most visible. It's not just a matchmaking screen, it's a place.
Let's put the numbers together because they tell a clean story. Street Fighter 6 launched June 2nd, 2023, hit 1 million copies in about a month, hit 3 million by January 2024, hit 7 million in June 2026, 3 years, compared to Street Fighter V, which took 7 years to reach the same number. Street Fighter 6 achieved the 7 million mark in less than half the time it took Street Fighter V. At EVO 2023, SF6 had 7,061 competitors in its bracket. That broke every previous record for a single fighting game tournament. Then EVO Japan 2026 just broke that record again, 7,168 competitors from 71 countries. Guinness World Records made it official on stage. Street Fighter 6 now holds both the old record and the new one. Street Fighter 6 had more competitors than all of the other 11 titles at EVO Japan combined.
Tekken 8 was in second place at 851 players, while Guilty Gear Strive took third at 692. 7,168 versus 851. The gap isn't even close. The Capcom Pro Tour prize pool hit $2 million total. That's a $1 million top prize, which Capcom themselves called a franchise record. The esports side isn't struggling for attention, it's setting records.
Street Fighter 6 is dominating fighting games because it did something its predecessor completely failed to do. It asked itself who the game was actually for, and then built everything around that answer. Veteran players who wanted deep systems, Drive System. Community members who wanted a living online space, Battle Hub. New players who wanted to feel cool immediately, Modern Controls, World Tour, Audio Accessibility. People who wanted a game with a real identity, hip-hop DNA baked into every pixel. Nakayama and Matsumoto spent their childhood listening to Public Enemy and Dr. Dre, and they made a game that looks and feels and sounds like it. That authenticity, that genuine love for the culture the game's named after, is something you can't fake and you can't buy. You can only build it in. 7 million copies, world record tournaments, an audience that got younger while every other fighting game's audience is aging out, a blind player winning on the main stage at EVO. That's what domination looks like. Drop a comment, which character do you main? And if you want to keep going, the God of War, Witcher 3, and Prism of 5 Beat 5s are all right here. See you there!